What's going on, guys? My name is Jake and this is your Body Comp Prescription. Hope you're all having a great day. In today's video, we're doing a new style of video. I wanted to do a reaction video to a title that I saw. A video popped up in my feed that Jeff Nippard made called "Is Obesity a Choice?" I thought this was super interesting. I didn't watch this ahead of time. I just wanted to do a live reaction so that way you guys can get some thoughts into how I think when I watch these kinds of videos to help kind of educate you. And Jeff Nippard is obviously a very well-respected figure in the exercise science space, in the fitness space, so it's definitely really interesting to see him take on a pretty controversial topic as "Is obesity a choice?" But without further ado, let's hop into the video. Alright, so we got the video all pulled up. I have not seen this before. This is going to be a true live reaction to the video that Jeff Nippard made called "Is Obesity a Choice?" and in parentheses, end of discussion. Let's check it out and see what he's got to say.
Is obesity a choice? This is a tough question, and a lot of people seem to think about it something like this, where you have an obese button on the left and a not obese button on the right. And anyone who is currently obese is obese because they made a conscious decision to press the obese button. But I don't think that's how it works. I mean, for starters, if you selected 100 people at random and gave them the option, my guess is that almost every one of them would press the not obese button. People know about the potential health risks and social stigma that can come with being obese, so virtually no one would consciously choose to be obese in this simplistic sense.
Alright, so I want to pause the video real quick because I do agree. I think a lot of people, if they had to classify themselves, even if they clearly do look overweight, they would probably not classify themselves as obese because that social stigma that comes alongside being overweight is generally looked down upon. And I think if you were to admit that you are obese, it kind of just makes it a lot more real for some people. And generally what happens is people that are obese tend to be in denial about it because they know that obesity is generally determined by BMI, so your body mass index, and that's just a height to weight ratio. And although that may be the case, it doesn't take into account muscle mass versus fat mass and all that good stuff. At the end of the day, you kind of have to be realistic with yourself when it comes to determining whether or not you're obese because of fat mass versus muscle mass, because generally, most people that have excessive amounts of muscle mass are considered overweight, not obese.
Maybe it looks something more like this, where you have this lifelong, continuous series of choices to pick certain foods over others, like whether to order fried chicken or grilled chicken, regular Coke or Diet Coke, small fries or supersized fries, and certain behaviors over others, like whether to get up and exercise or stay on the couch. And over time, maybe it's the cumulative effect of these many individual choices that causes someone to become obese. I do think this is a bit closer to reality. However, even this analogy is still very incomplete. Consider this graph taken from a
So Jeff is a super sciencey guy and he's super research based. So before we get into that, I do like how he simplifies this for a lot of people because it's not just whether you pick regular soda over diet soda or if you pick a fried food over a grilled food. It's kind of an accumulation of those things because what a lot of people tend to do is demonize one thing over the other, whether it be carbs are bad, or you shouldn't have high sugary drinks, or you shouldn't be having artificial sweeteners because those are also bad for you. It's not necessarily one thing that's going to make you obese overnight. It's an accumulation of a lot of these things that will make you obese over a period of time.
1990 study where 24 subjects were overfed by 1,000 calories per day for 100 days, or just over 3 months. All the subjects were under 24/7 supervision by the research staff, so we can be confident they were actually following the protocol. Each one of these bars represents a single person, and the height of the bar represents how much weight they gained in response to the same 1,000 calorie surplus. This person, over here on the left, only gained an extra 10 pounds, while this person, over here on the right, gained an extra 30 pounds while eating the same 1,000 calories extra per day. This could be due to a number of factors, but a big one is genetic differences in metabolism. Looking at this later study from 2018, we can see that just like there are large differences in weight gain, there are also large differences in how many calories people burn at rest. Just sitting on the couch, doing nothing at all, this lucky person over here burns about 150 calories more than metabolic equations predict, and this person on the left would burn 250 calories less than metabolic equations predict.
So basically he's just referring to BMR. Everyone has a different BMR, and that's based upon your height, weight, your hormones, your metabolism, and a bunch of other factors that help determine how many calories you burn at rest. That's all individual to the person.
In other words, if none of these people exercised at all, this person would still burn about 400 calories more per day than this person. So, going back to the buttons, a small fries from McDonald's has about 200 calories, and a supersized fries has about 600 calories. All else being equal, that's a 400 calorie surplus if you choose to supersize. But this person also burns 400 calories more. So through no action of their own, they could choose to supersize every time, and their net caloric balance would be exactly the same as this other person who chooses the small fries. But this only considers resting energy expenditure, the number of calories you burn at rest. People also burn calories through exercise, the thermic effect of food, and something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. And the NEAT component of metabolism can vary dramatically between individuals, even more than resting energy expenditure. NEAT refers to the calories you burn from daily activities that aren't actual exercise. So stuff like fidgeting, tapping your feet, etc. And even though you can somewhat modify your NEAT levels by making an extra effort to move around a bit more throughout the day, NEAT is still largely subconsciously regulated in the brain, and it's dynamic. So if you have a genetic predisposition for low NEAT, you aren't very hyperactive, and you don't fidget much, and let's say you tried to force yourself to fidget more, in many cases, your brain would simply find a way to lower NEAT someplace else. So NEAT is, to a significant degree, outside of your control, and it can differ enormously between individuals. This study from Levine and colleagues overfed participants by 1,000 calories per day for 8 weeks and found that NEAT levels ranged from negative 98, they actually moved around less, to plus 692 calories per day. This means that while both of these subjects ate an extra 1,000 calories per day, this person quite literally fidgeted off about 700 of those extra 1,000, while this person actually fidgeted less, meaning their body had to deal with all those extra 1,000 calories eaten, plus a little more. So clearly, anyone who's been genetically blessed with a high resting metabolic rate and high NEAT levels can choose to press the junk food button many more times and still maintain a lower body weight compared to someone who's not as metabolically gifted.
So this is something that I hear all the time. This is a complaint usually from people who struggle with their weight, is that they see a skinny person and they're like, oh, you can eat whatever you want and never gain weight. This is one of those reasons why that happens.
And this matches with our everyday experience. We all know someone who can eat whatever they want and remain almost inexplicably thin. We all know someone who's tried every diet book on the shelf, yet remains overweight. Now, most people would be quick to praise the thin person for their discipline and critique the overweight person for simply lacking willpower and making the wrong choices, not realizing the many baseline genetic factors that could be making it very easy for the thin person to stay thin and making it very hard for the overweight person to lose any weight at all. But that's just metabolism. There's another big factor here, which is hunger. Research also shows that some people simply experience more hunger than others in response to dieting. Some people feel like they're constantly fighting their body's urge to eat more, while others feel more normal hunger, where it's low after meals and picks up as it gets closer to mealtime. Just consider this hunger study from 2013, which looked at the difference between eating a high-fat meal and a low-fat meal. Now, it turns out both the high-fat meal and the low-fat meal were able to suppress hunger very well on average. However, when that average trend was split up into individual subjects, you suddenly see this huge disparity between individuals. Some people were still quite hungry after eating the meal, others felt very full. And since hunger is what naturally drives food intake for most people, we once again see that someone who still feels very hungry after a meal will have a harder time stopping compared to someone who feels full. So we've covered 2 genetic factors explaining why weight gain happens to some people more easily than others, even given the same food and exercise choices. But there are still so many other biological factors that can play a role, such as whether or not you take certain medications that can increase appetite and water retention. There are also neuroendocrine conditions that can impact weight gain through hormones and metabolism. Then there's
So I wanted to stop it right there, because a lot of people, when you go on TikTok, when you go on social media, myself included, right? Everyone loves to just beat a dead horse when it comes to losing weight comes down to a calorie deficit. And although that's true, you do need a calorie deficit in order to lose weight, there are other factors that come into play that determine how easy it is for you to lose weight, because hormones play a big factor when it comes to losing weight. It's not just a calorie deficit, because a lot of those hormones facilitate things with your metabolism. And if your hormones aren't functioning properly, or you don't have enough of those hormones being produced by your body, like testosterone levels for guys as you get older, or estrogen levels for women as they get older.
pregnancy and menopause, which have hormonal and metabolic impacts, and physical disabilities, which makes burning calories through NEAT and exercise more challenging. Now, of course, all of this doesn't mean that calories in, calories out only works for some people. It is a simple fact that obesity results from eating more calories than you burn. And tightly controlled metabolic ward experiments repeatedly confirm that caloric intake is the driver of both fat loss and fat gain. So this means that anyone who is obese got obese by eating in a sustained caloric surplus over time. It's just that avoiding that sustained surplus is so much harder for some people than it is for others, and for reasons that are beyond their choosing. And this is why I think it's incorrect to reduce all of these factors down to a simple choice to be obese or not. Because if that were the case, why would obesity rates suddenly start trending up in the 1970s? Did people just suddenly start choosing to be obese? Or is there yet another layer to this? Well, no, I don't think that the spike was due to more people choosing to be obese, but rather from the fact that high-calorie foods became so much more readily available for cheaper prices, meaning more people had more access to delicious, highly processed, high-calorie foods. And this leads us into the whole other side of this, which is the environmental factors. So, entirely apart from the genetic and biological factors that we just went through, there are also environmental factors that can impact your susceptibility to obesity. This includes stuff like the food environment, where apart from the spike in availability, we also see better, flashier marketing for high-calorie foods that promote overconsumption and large portion sizes. There's also the fact that junk food tends to be cheaper, meaning it's more accessible for people with lower economic incomes. Then there are social factors, like the type of diet your family and friends eat, which can make it a lot harder, or in the case of dependents like children, virtually impossible to make so-called good choices. Then there are the lifestyle factors, like how much sleep you get. And while it may be tempting to tell people to just get more sleep, that isn't always feasible depending on work and other responsibilities. In fact, this 2017 meta-analysis found that night shift work was associated with a 23% higher risk of being overweight, and this 2019 meta-analysis found a dose-response relationship between sleep duration and obesity risk. Less sleep meant more risk of being obese, with 7 to 8 hours being the sweet spot on average.
Cortisol,
and there are psychological
probably.
factors like stress and depression. This 2010 meta-analysis of 14 studies found that stress was a risk factor for weight gain, and this other meta-analysis from the same year found that depression was predictive of obesity risk. So, coming back to the original question, is obesity a choice? Well, I think the answer is no, at least not in all cases, and certainly not in the simplistic sense. There's just too much of an influence from genetics and environment to shift the blame entirely on the individual for their circumstance. But that also doesn't mean that no one has any control over their health and their body weight. Clearly, if people want to lose weight, even if there are many factors working against them, such as low metabolic rate, high hunger, and so forth, it's still possible to lose weight if you sustain a caloric deficit over time. And I can link another video here explaining exactly how to do that, which goes beyond simply eating less calories and delves into behavioral modifications that most people will need to make to have long-term success. Ultimately, though, I think the is obesity a choice question comes back to semantics. Perhaps what I mean by choice is slightly different from what you mean by choice, but I think that if you did want to argue that it is a choice in some sense, I think the best you could do is say that it's a complex series of choices intertwined with many other complex contributing factors. And so, as people in the health and fitness space, I think we should make an effort to be more understanding of these factors and more compassionate toward people who are struggling, rather than making assumptions about their choices and their characteristics. And then, instead of blaming them for their circumstance, instead focus on pointing them in the right direction with good, sustainable nutrition advice when they ask for it. Now, I want to give a quick shout out.
All right, so I want to pause the video because I think I have a general idea of what Jeff is saying, basically. He didn't really answer the question, is obesity a choice? I mean, he said basically no, but he basically rerouted the question to say that a lot of people tend to judge people who are obese, and they're quick to decide, oh, you're either lazy, you don't have the discipline to control your diet, you don't go to the gym enough. For whatever reason, they're obese and they believe that they don't have it in them to get the job done, to get their weight down and get their weight into control, basically. But in my opinion, when it comes to this question, is obesity a choice? I think it's a really ridiculous question, to be completely honest, because I think there's very few people out there that choose to be obese, right? Like, I don't think there's that many people who consciously decide every single day, yep, I'm going to make poor decisions every single day because you know, you only live once. I want to eat good. I don't want to exercise because it's tiring, it's exhausting. I just don't want to go through the effort. I'd much rather just be obese than be healthy, fit, and all the other pros that come alongside avoiding obesity, like lowering your risk of chronic disease, improving your quality of life, possibly extending your life, your functional ability in your daily life, etc., etc. Okay, so that's basically the end of the video. I basically want to close it out by saying this, right? I'll give you my own personal experience of growth in this aspect and how people need to be more accepting of certain circumstances and being able to understand how you can help them. That's not just, you're not disciplined, you're not XYZ, right? When I was younger and when I was starting out at the gym, obviously a lot of you know me in person or you see me in videos. You know I'm not the biggest person ever, and I've never really had an issue with my weight. So I would see someone who is struggling with their weight and say, you're just not going to the gym enough, or you're not training hard enough. That's a really common excuse for people now. I used to just make things very black and white when it comes to people's physique. If you're overweight, it's because you're either not working out hard enough, or you're not controlling your diet, or you're not recovering. It's usually one of those three factors. And even when I was at school studying exercise science, getting my degree, this didn't necessarily click in my head yet until I became a trainer. And even though I am knowledgeable about functional movement and metabolism, it didn't really click to me until I had my first client as a trainer, because I tried to do the same exact thing that I would do for them because they explained to me that their goals were the same and that their history was very similar. But as we continued training, there wasn't much progress being made because there are so many other factors that play into your weight loss than calories and your workout. And that's why I wanted to talk about hormones earlier, because they play such a big role in your weight loss journey. And that's why I strongly urge everyone to make sure you're keeping up with your blood work, you see your physician, you make sure that everything is right. Because if your hormones aren't acting right, it doesn't matter how many times a day you work out or how often you work out or what diet you're doing, that can severely impact your results. And when it comes down to your environmental factors, I made sure to pull this up so that way you guys can see what I'm talking about. Aside from a couple of these like depression, sleep and stress, and then the socioeconomic factors, I do think it does come down to discipline. And when it comes to these social factors, you do kind of have to pick your battles, right? Because this is a reason that a lot of people say that they struggle with their weight, is the social factor that comes alongside food, right? Whether it's drinking or going out to lunch with your coworkers or family parties or whatever the reason may be. Because if you know that these events are happening ahead of time, that gives you time to plan for what's to come. If you know that you're going out for drinks later, you can save some calories, you can save some carbs for a drink, so that way you don't have to miss out. But I'm gonna wrap the video up here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been wanting to do this reactionary style video for quite a while now, so let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and dropping a like. We're almost at 400 subscribers. That would be awesome if we could hit that sometime soon. I'll go ahead and leave a link to Jeff's channel down in the description. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.